This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I've got a conversation with David Vincent, formerly of Morbid Angel, to share with you. Now, this conversation occurred very early on in my podcasting career, on May 4th, 2017, and it's been available on the Scars and Guitars podcast via the usual apps, Apple Music, etc. ever since, and this is the first time I'm launching it on YouTube. Throughout this chat here, you'll learn David's reasons for transitioning into outlaw country, his move to Texas. He talks about that. We discuss Genitorturers. I haven't heard him talk about that really anywhere else, and I've listened to a fair few of his interviews, but we dive into that topic there, and of course we discuss Morbid Angel. In particular, I was very keen to learn about his thoughts and opinions on working with former bandmates, and at the time, poor old Richard Brunel was alive, so you'll have to wait and see what he has to say about Richard there. So this conversation, again, is very early on in my podcasting career. It's not as free-flowing as you've probably gotten used to me in so many of the episodes, but I was still learning the craft back then. I think it's still pretty good, and there's plenty of deep insight here for the seasoned and relatively new Morbid Angel fan. You're going to get something out of it. So here he is, David Vincent from, or ex-Morbid Angel.
Heartfelt congratulations on a stellar career. I've got a bunch of questions that I would like to ask you about your career, but before we talk about the past, let's talk about the present. Drinking with the Devil. What's your take on fan reaction to your new material?
Well, believe it or not, it's much more positive than I expected, at least from my historical fans. I think people get it. You know, it's just,
yep.
It's I'm just telling stories in a different way. That's all. You know, after arriving in Texas, I started working with some musicians that I met here, and I just felt inspired and just started writing a bunch of songs.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, actually. What inspired you to move to Texas and start writing and performing outlaw country music?
Well, let's just say that I went through a lot of life changes, and this is somewhere that I had, in the back of my mind, always thought, yeah, I really would like to get out that way, and it finally happened, and since it has, I decided that I was just gonna open up and open myself up to some different ideas, and listening to some different stuff, and meeting some different folks, and it's been very fulfilling.
Sure, yeah. What country artists inspire you in particular? Is it the cliche there, of course, is Johnny Cash, but I assume it goes.
Well, I don't think he's cliched at all. Well, listen, I'll stop you there. I don't think that Johnny Cash is cliched at all. I mean, he is one roots artist who, gosh, I mean, he is crossed into being counted amongst the fans of a very diverse group of genres.
Sure, yeah.
People who are into metal like him, people that are in country like him, people that are in rock like him, old people, young people. All different walks of life. I mean, he's one of those rare individuals that had a hell of a career. So yes, of course. I mean, I've always liked Johnny Cash. I don't care for some of the new, more I guess pop country type stuff.
Sure. Yep.
That's but I don't know that I like that in any in any genre. I don't really like pop metal. I don't really like pop dance. I don't know. It's just, not really my cup of tea.
Yeah,
but,
not really music that moves anybody except for shifting units, as they like to say in the record industry. Do you think this is something that is a permanent change for you? Can we expect the country music or the outlaw country music to be a continuous factor in your career?
Well, I'm doing 4 things right now. That is one of 4 things that I'm doing. But I just, you know what? I'm at a point where, you know, I've been on this planet for a while, and I've done, you know, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to visit, you know, just about every country that I've wanted to. I've played, you know, shitty small clubs. I've played the biggest festivals in the world. Like, I've done pretty much everything, and now I've decided that I just want to do, you know, just whatever comes to mind, and not really. It doesn't have to have a preconceived notion. So that's a long answer to a short question, but the answer is yes, and that's something. But I keep it separate. I mean, I would never combine, you know, metal and country, because I look at it, you know, entirely differently. Yeah, you know, and obviously the players are, well, I mean, and you know, the people that I make the roots music with they're not metal musicians. I mean, that's just not. They don't live in that world. Yeah, so.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about the metal music for a moment, because you've recently announced the formation and intention to perform Morbid Angel songs underneath a new banner, I Am Morbid. Tell me what the motivation and the decision to perform Morbid Angel songs with new musicians is motivated by.
Well, basically, I just hired a couple of guitar players, and this is really fan-driven.
Yes.
This is after just people coming to me, man, you know, we want to hear you, and, you know, like, you know, we want to hear you sing your songs, and and which I'm not opposed to, but I mean, you know, again, I had to get a few things out of my system before I came back this way, but I'm actually really excited about it. The stuff sounds great, and there's a lot less aggravation.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And Bill Hudson, phenomenal guitar player. Tell me how you both met.
Well, I've known him for some time. In fact, when we were auditioning guitar players prior to Destructor coming in the band, Bill actually sent. Like he actually auditioned. It didn't make it to the formal stage. I went out and met him, and I went and saw him play. I didn't think that it was the right time, but he and I became, you know, friends over the years. And phenomenal guitar player is an understatement. He's a very, very good guitar player. And it's been, you know, it's been fun. You know, sort of reinterpreting some classical material with him.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I first heard of Tim Young when I bought a Hate Eternal album back in year 2000, I think it was. And I had the pleasure of seeing you both perform in Morbid Angel in the Hi-Fi in Brisbane in 2014, which was a phenomenal show, by the way. You guys are clearly bonding musically. Can you tell me about your partnership with Tim?
Well, you know, one thing is you know, as a bass player, you know, your drummer is your best friend.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We really hit it off. I mean, you know, and have maintained a friendship within the band and outside of the band. We share a lot of the same interests, and we've kept in touch through thick and through thin. And I really like him. I mean, he's a gem to play with. Again, incredibly talented musician. He's capable of doing anything that you throw at him and doing it well.
Yeah.
So it felt, you know, when we had our initial rehearsals and just everything it's almost like just picking back up. It's like, wow. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you know, I've kind of missed this too. And I'm like, all right, well, good. So, you know, it all, you know, the stars aligned.
You mentioned something there which I'm a musician as well. I'm a bass player and a guitarist, but I'm a bass player first and foremost. And your bass playing is something that rarely gets mentioned, yet you can actually play it rather well. I remember in the Brisbane show, you actually started to do some thumb bass for a moment. I don't know whether you remember that, but you started to do some slap and pop Larry Graham stuff for about 3 seconds, and I wished you'd kept on going with it.
That's that's not really my forte. Sometimes if I'm just messing around, but I mean I can't. I don't have that vibe, and there's certainly people out there that would always do that much better than I could. But I enjoy bass as an instrument. I mean I have a low voice, so I hear low. I'm just a low end kind of guy,
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about your inspirations on the bass guitar, though, because as you say, you've selected the instrument as your choice, given the timbre of your voice. But did anybody inspire you to play the bass in particular?
Well, I mean, I can go back to my childhood. I started with Dennis Dunaway and Mel Shacker and Geezer Butler, obviously. Mm-hmm. Those were probably the initials, the initial few, and then Chris Squire.
Great.
And then obviously Steve Harris had a profound change on it, even the way that I look at the instrument. So yeah, I mean, just good 70s stuff, and then back when you could actually listen to a record and bass wasn't just a shadow of the guitar, and when that's one thing about metal, and it's kind of gotten there. Either you overplay it, or you, in order to when you have a riff centric band that plays material like the Morbid material.
Yep.
Oftentimes there's not much room to really hot rod, as you will.
Yeah.
Just stick with the drums, and obviously, when you have a series of chromatic passing tones, there's not much room in there to do, a walk per se.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, good answer. Good answer. And it's. I don't think I've ever really read you commenting on your bass player, so thanks for sharing that. Bass playing, so thanks for sharing that. Yeah. You are an originator of both death metal and grindcore. So, what's your own take on your contribution to the extreme metal genre, given the reverence by fans and critics for both Morbid Angel and Terrorizer?
Well, I just feel that I've just always done what has moved me. When we were first starting out in the early days of Morbid Angel, there wasn't sort of something to look to and be like, well, we want to sound like this. There weren't a lot of bands, so we didn't really pay attention necessarily to what others were doing. I mean, there was a few, Chuck Schuldiner, and a few other, if we started underground, fanzine type bands, and then of course, Slayer was out, Merciful Fate, this kind of thing, but there wasn't really like a extreme, death metal presence that was, as in your face it is these days, at least. Mm-hmm. So
did you have a relationship with Chuck Schuldiner at all?
Yeah, we were buddies.
Gotcha. Yeah. What do you remember about him?
Just really laid back, fun guy. I mean, we lived in Daytona Beach and he lived in Orlando, and we lived virtually on the beach. And he'd come over and, we'd just go hang out on the beach. Nice. Look at girls, I mean, that's what you do, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, great. Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to say, both Morbid Angel and Death are my two favourite extreme metal bands by a long way. I both got into you in the early 90s when I was a teenager, and you stayed with me the entire time, actually. So there you go.
Cool.
Genitorturers. Now, I hope you don't mind me asking a question about your time in the band, but there's a bit of ambiguity out there about your time in the band, and it's not that you changed names, but you adopted the moniker Evil D. And like many, in 1996, after you left Morbid Angel, we didn't really have the internet back then as we do now, and I had no idea where you went to, and found out a couple of years later through Metal Maniacs magazine that you were in Genitorturers. Can you shed some light on your time in that band?
Sure. Well, so I was married to the singer, and it was just kind of like, something that it wasn't my thing. It was a thing that I was just doing, right? So it was very entertaining, but it was just it's more more of a rock band, more punk / rock / I guess a bit of industrial thrown in, but that was just more, that's all about her vision.
Yeah, gotcha. So certainly the fans that I talk to, the feedback that I get is they're a bit confused about the transition from Morbid Angel into Genitorturers. For example, a lot of people, myself included, consider you the premier voice of death metal, and you were sort of in the background in an underground, when I use this term, okay, I think I'm borrowing the term from somebody who used it on the internet, S&M industrial music. Was it a decision to sort of get out of the limelight for a bit, or is it just the way things evolved?
No, I was just supporting Jen. And that was, I just, it was a fun, it was very entertaining for me too, because gosh, she had a stage show that she put together that was just, I never knew what the hell, sometimes I'd be looking over and be like, what in the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
No, it's just, it was entertaining for me. And kind of took my mind off of, kind of got me readjusted for, so no, I definitely was not in the limelight in that band. I was just complete playing a supportive role.
Gotcha. Where do you think your time in Genitorturers fits in the overall scheme and your considerable legacy?
Not as it was important for different reasons, not so much from a musical standpoint. But it just, I don't know. It's just, part of a portfolio.
Sure. Yep.
Some of it was more enjoyable than others. It was a passing, something that came and I haven't done that it's been over a decade since I've had anything to do with that.
Yep, gotcha. Did you guys ever tour Australia?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I thought you might have, actually, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong here, but I think it was about 2003 or so, and I remember seeing the ad for it, but only after you guys had sort of come and gone. I don't know who the promoter was, but it wasn't really broadcast prominently, if you like, and right. You sort of came and went.
That happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember a few of course, my metal listening brethren and I were quite annoyed that we didn't get an opportunity to see you in any way, shape or form. But anyway, that's life and that's in the past. So I'll, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you.
Yeah. It was fun times, man. It's always better to do more than do less.
No, for sure. Yeah, no. I have seen a couple of videos on YouTube and they look great. The music sounds good.
Again, it's fun. It's not. It's definitely it in no way, shape, or form resembles or is meant to resemble, like extreme metal or country, for that matter. So,
yep. Okay, going to talk about Morbid Angel again, if that's okay, and somebody that you were in the band with for a number of years. Pete Sandoval. Tell me about your relationship with Pete.
I feel that it's pretty good. I saw him not too long ago, and he's kind of changed directions a little bit, and he's found some ways to get him through. He had some pretty severe physical challenges that really were much worse than I had imagined them being.
Yep.
He has a personality that sometimes he has the ability to over accentuate things on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you're just like, oh, well, it's just Pete's personality. That's just the way that he talks and stuff. But when he was, saying, yeah, my back is really bothering me. And again, I never dreamed that it was really as bad as it was until I actually saw, his MRI reports. I'm like, God, man, this is really serious.
Yeah.
And probably should have been addressed much sooner. Yeah. So thankfully he's doing a lot better now. And he seems happy. He seems like he's not, because he's not in pain. So that means that he's not having to take so much pain medication that also has the tendency to, alter someone's personality after a while.
Yes.
So that's all of these things. You look back in retrospect, it's like, wow, man, that. But Pete was and still is really a trooper. He worked really, 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 really hard to achieve everything that he did, and I have nothing but respect for that.
Wonderful. And another Morbid Angel luminary, Eric Rutan. Can you tell me about your relationship with Eric?
I get along with Eric well. Tremendous guitar player. We worked together for several years. And he actually even came back into Morbid for a short period of time. I almost want to say, I think it was at least a year, to do some festivals and stuff. And, amazing guy. He has he's become almost a go-to producer now. He's gotten really, really good, and he makes really great records. I'm proud of him. All these people, man, it's just like, I appreciate it when people, get after something. If they have a dream to do something and they do it and they're actually successful on it, and they don't give up and they don't take no for an answer. I mean, Eric is another one of those people who he decided he was going to get after something, and he did it in a big way. So.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And the guitarist prior to Eric, of course, was Richard Brunel. Do you have much contact with him these days, or is he just off the radar completely?
None. I have very little contact with him. He has his own challenges that he has to deal with.
Yep, fair enough.
No animosity, but there's no animosity. But it's just like, it's been, gosh, I don't know, 6-8 years since I've spoken to him.
Mm-hmm. Now, thanks for the feedback on that one there. Yeah, it's look, without going into any detail, of course, I've seen that there's been some challenges that he's facing through some news reports on the internet. So I hope he manages to sort things out. Yeah.
Well, that's just that's a pattern.
Right. Yep.
And it's like all adults have to make their own decisions. I mean, you get at a point where you're at a certain age, and there aren't parents to tell you what to do anymore, and hopefully there's you find yourself in a situation where you're able to make choices that are going to keep you out in the free world, and and not creating making choices that are going to create additional aggravations in your lives and or the life of your friends or perhaps bandmates or significant others or whatever the hell,
Yeah, no, gotcha.
So
my next question is about Illud Divinum Insanus, because I genuinely love that album and even went to the extent of buying it on vinyl. I'll just tell you a funny story. The song Destructos versus the Earth Attack, I've got 2 young daughters, they're both underneath the age of 4, and we put on that song and we stomp around the living room, and we try to get the dog, we've got an English Bull Terrier, and we try to get the dog to jump up in the backyard to look at us through the window, because he knows that when we put on that song, as the kids start jumping and stomping around, that it's our little family get together. So I want to thank you for writing that song and creating a family moment for us.
Oh boy! Well, that was a really weird one. There's a number of things on that record that are really weird, and there was some strange ideas at the time, and I did my best to work with them and just clear my mind of any preconceived notions and do my part, which is sing the song. So
yeah, look, if you don't mind me,
try to find a strange way to tell a story with it too.
If you don't mind me saying, it sounded pretty apparent where a lot of the weird influences were coming from. Was that something that you could see evolving over a period of time, or was it something that just sort of came out and went, right, we're going to change from doing... Because Heretic's a very odd-sounding record as well. It's paper thin. And then you go to Illud, which is very broad, and of course it's very dense and it's got a lot of context and there's a lot of variety and diversity on the album. Were you the author of much of the music? Or...
I wrote I Am Morbid. Top to bottom.
Okay.
But I wanted to do that kind of a song because really, I mean, that actually, the story behind that. So we were playing a show. Now I'll try to make it as Reader Digest version as possible. And the crowd, we happened to be recording the show, and that chant in there, that was the crowd.
Right.
So, and I remember hearing that when we were listening back to the tapes, and I heard morbid, morbid, clap, clap, more, and I just kept thinking about that, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking write a song with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the story behind that.
Yeah, gotcha. Do you think, or did the reaction of some fans and critics surprise you though, regardless?
No. Not any more than any other record.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, with each record, I mean, after Altars, I mean, when Blessed came out, everybody had some strange reaction. Oh, they've slowed down. Oh, there's always that. And then, some years later, wow, man, that's my favorite record. And then when Covenant came out and people heard God of Emptiness, and like, oh, complain. And that was like the biggest record, it just takes a while for people to catch up sometimes, because it's not predictable, and it's not, probably Illud was way less predictable than anyone would have predicted, myself included. It's just, you have a group and you make you take everything to the next level, within the best that you can and your contributions.
Yeah.
And I do that with everything I do.
Yep. No, agreed. Well, look, as I say, and I'm quite sincere about this, I do quite like the record. Probably, I can't remember the name of the first track where it's electronically based. I'm not a big fan of that one, but the rest of the album I can actually get into, and as I say, it's given me an opportunity to bond with my very young children. So there you go. But look, we're almost running out of time, and of course,
we are.
I just want to ask you a question about Trey. Feel free to share as much or as little information about your relationship with Trey as you like.
Listen, Trey is a very creative guitar player. There's no doubt about that. And I will always respect that.
Okay. Well,
that wraps things up. Again, I just want to thank you so much for taking your time out, and of course to Suzanne again for organising things. Do you think you'll be bringing I Am Morbid down to Australia anytime soon?
Well, oddly enough, since we announced this tour, the inbox has been filling up. So we'll see what happens.
Well, fingers crossed on that one there.
Listen, I always enjoy visiting Australia. It's a wonderful country.
Well, we love you having here, mate, I've got to tell you. All right, thanks so much again, mate. All the very best. Congratulations on a wonderful career again. And yeah, certainly hope to see you down here sometime soon.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Well, there you go. That's a conversation with David Vincent from Morbid Angel. Again, it occurred a few years back, May 4th, 2017. It was the first ever podcast episode that was launched under the Scars and Guitars banner. I think it's pretty good. That's why I'm sharing it with you here again. I have spoken to other Morbid Angel bandmates, or people who are in Morbid Angel is a better way to describe it, and also Trey from the group's mother. I only recently uploaded that, but again, that was a conversation that occurred in 2019 that I've repurposed for YouTube, so check it out if you want to get the lowdown from Trey's mum, all about him. Mike Browning too, from Nocturnus AD and the original vocalist and drummer. Had a chat with him. I've had a few conversations with Pete Commando Sandoval. Yeah, some interesting stories to share about him, but I haven't been able to share those chats because I told Pete that I wouldn't. But I did write a yarn, so if you're interested in that, go across to scarsandguitars.com and search Pete Sandoval, and you should be able to find that one fairly easily. Also too, when you're on the website, dive into the rest of the podcast episodes there, because you're sure to find a bunch of stuff that you'll enjoy listening to. Recently spoke to the guys at In Flames and Michael Ammett from Carcass and Arch Enemy. So if you like, I love talking to musicians in the world of extreme metal, and if you like listening to those sort of chats, I'm here for you. So my name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. So I've written a book, and there's some more information to share with you in the moment, but before we get to that, I really appreciate that you've tuned in. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
You know, if you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, you know, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, you know, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
My name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Trey Exagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.